I'm sorry, Vanessa. The seats are really limited. Once we invited your father's old colleagues and my old friends, everything filled up quickly. And you're busy with work anyway. Even through the receiver, my mother Grace's voice was carefully, almost sweetly coded. Whenever she tried to make me accept something, she always used that voice. I sat at my desk with blueprints spread out, staring at the flow of cars outside the window. The sound of tires rubbing against the asphalt was louder in my ears than her words. I understand, Mom. Have fun, I answered shortly. There was no need to let her offer any more excuses. As soon as I said that, her voice was filled with unmistakable relief. Thank you for understanding. I love you. Those words stirred nothing in me. After the call ended, only silence remained in the room. And that silence pressed down on my shoulders like gravity. My parents' 40th wedding anniversary party. There was no seat for me, the daughter of the two people being celebrated. Everything began with the hurricane that hit the city 5 years ago. My parents' house was half destroyed, and they nearly lost everything. I poured all my knowledge as an architect, all my connections, and all my savings into rebuilding their home. I believed it was my duty as their daughter. My father, Daniel's tears, and my mother's gratitude were enough of a reward for me then. But even after the house was rebuilt, for some reason, the bills kept coming to me. First, the property taxes, then their medical insurance, my brother Nick's child's tuition, my sister Hannah's credit card debt. Whenever they had a problem, they called my number. It was never a consultation. It was always a transaction. I had realized long ago that they didn't want my love. They wanted my income. Even so, I kept paying. I kept telling myself it was the only way to hold the family together. But now I knew that connection had been an illusion. I was their ATM, their safety net. But in their shining family portrait, I had no place. I glanced at the calendar on my desk. The party was tonight. That evening, I pretended to be calm. The weekend, I hadn't been invited to my parents' party. I drove for hours to the newly completed beach house to clear my mind. The physical distance felt symbolic of the distance between our hearts. Only the soft crackle of the fireplace echoed through the wide living room. Here, where their laughter couldn't reach, I thought I could finally feel at peace. My phone chimed with a short notification sometime after 9 p.m. The screen lit up in my hand as I sat on the sofa. The name displayed was Tracy, my brother Nick's wife. She almost never contacted me directly. A sense of dread rose in my chest, but I opened the message. Attached was a single photo. Under the warm lights of a restaurant, my family was gathered around a table. My parents, my brother and his wife, my sister, and my uncles, aunts, and cousins. Without a doubt, it was a relatives-only group photo. Everyone was raising champagne glasses, performing the perfect moment of happiness. The photo alone was enough of an insult. The message Tracy added beneath it pierced me even deeper. Having the best time with the real family. That wasn't all. Tracy had posted the exact same thing on social media. And separately, the many friends my mother had mentioned were posting photo after photo of the lively party. The likes were skyrocketing. I felt the blood drain from my body. Tracy had deliberately gathered only the relatives from among the large crowd and sent that photo straight to me. This wasn't a simple exclusion. It was a meticulously orchestrated, ritualistic expulsion. Why did she hate me this much? I knew the reason. My success reflected the failure of my brother and his wife, the cruel mirror they couldn't bear. They lived in the house I paid property taxes on. They drove the car whose insurance I covered. Those facts gnawed at Tracy's pride little by little. So she painted my devotion as arrogance and my independence as betrayal of the family. Vanessa is married to her work. She lives in a different world from us. Her words were more than mere disdain. It was calculated poison, designed to isolate me from the family and distract them from their own misery. My mother Grace's gentle lies were powerless in the face of Tracy's cruel truth. I set my phone down on the sofa. My fingertips had gone ice cold. For years, I had been walking on thin ice, but now that ice had shattered completely beneath me. There was no place left to return to. A quiet anger began to spread slowly inside me. Still sitting on the sofa, I stared up at the ceiling for a while. Tracy's message was burned into my mind, refusing to leave. Beyond anger, there was an eerie calm in my chest. A calm that felt almost like resignation. Scenes from the past flashed through my mind one by one. Hannah's college graduation party. My sister, not even the main guest of honor, wearing the most expensive dress of anyone there and handing out champagne to her friends. I had silently paid for all of it. Then there was the time my brother Nick wanted a luxury car just to satisfy Tracy's vanity. "Vanessa, you're successful, aren't you?" he said, as if it were natural that I should provide the down payment. And I remembered the day my mother, in the house I had rebuilt after the hurricane, said with no shame at all, "We need a more elegant kitchen if we're going to host the neighbors for dinner parties. The kitchen is the face of the house. We can't invite anyone with it looking like this." My devotion had been nothing more than fuel to inflate their endless greed. I had been tossing logs into the fire, hoping to be loved, while they simply warmed themselves without giving anything back. Enough. I stood up and opened my laptop. My fingers hovered over the social media post window. At first, angry words came to mind. "I'm done being your ATM," I typed, then deleted. "Have you ever thanked me even once for what I've done?" I wrote, then erased again. Emotional words would only give them room for excuses. They would twist it for sympathy and paint me as the villain. What I needed was simple: facts and an unshakable decision. That was all. I selected a few photos of the villa I was currently in. The moonlit ocean visible from the glass-walled living room. The still surface of the infinity pool. This villa was the product of my blood and sweat. A place I had built, protected, and nurtured, my very soul. A place they knew nothing about. Then, calmly, I chose each word with precision. To my mother and father, congratulations on your 40th anniversary. For years, I have paid your property taxes, medical insurance, and even my brother's children's tuition. Yet at your anniversary party, there was no seat for me, your family. Therefore, I will spend this holiday in the place I built with my own hands. As of today, I will no longer cover property taxes, insurance fees, tuition, or any other financial support. The moment I pressed the post button, I felt the invisible chain that had been strangling me for years shatter instantly. I could breathe deeply. I had forgotten how good fresh air could taste. A storm would come soon. But I was no longer the powerless daughter standing in the middle of the hurricane. I was inside the fortress I had built with my own hands. My post was a bomb that destroyed their perfect night. 5 minutes. That was how long it took for Tracy's triumphant family photo to disappear from the internet. And a few hours after that, my silence was shattered by the harsh crunch of tires rolling over gravel. Someone pounded on the front door as if trying to break it down. When I opened it, my family stood there. Their party clothes were wrinkled, their faces twisted with anger and confusion. My mother stood at the front. "Vanessa, why would you do something like that? Were you trying to humiliate us?" Right after her shrill voice, Tracy glared at me. "You ruined the party." My father and brother stood behind them, staring at me with condemnation. Hannah waved her phone at me as if presenting evidence. "I've always wondered what you were secretly spending money on. So I set your location to sync with my phone. Every weekend, your signal would disappear out near the edge of the resort area. I knew something was off, but I never thought you were hiding a place like this." Her words explained everything. I hadn't realized they were tracking me, but I had chosen this spot intentionally, slightly away from the main resort area, because the unstable signal gave me peace and privacy. That choice had ended up protecting my secret. But as they continued shouting, their eyes began to wander past me into the interior of the villa. The towering floor-to-ceiling windows, the minimalist, refined designer furniture, and beyond the glass, the illuminated infinity pool stretched out into the night. One by one, their voices fell silent. Their expressions of anger shifted, slowly, awkwardly, into disbelief, as if they were seeing something impossible. The income of the convenient Vanessa they thought they knew had materialized into a reality far beyond anything they had imagined. My mother was the first to break the silence. Her anger had vanished, replaced by a sticky, unmistakable greed seeping into her tone. She stepped forward and grabbed my arm, tears brimming in her eyes. "Oh, Vanessa, to think you've been living in such a wonderful place. Come on, let us live here with you. We're family after all." The moment I heard those words, they no longer looked like people to me. They were something else entirely. I slowly shook off her hand. Her touch felt like a desperate claw reaching for my wealth. I stepped back and looked at each of their faces, one by one. My mother's face, twisted by desire. Tracy's a mixture of jealousy and shock. My father and Nick, bewildered and overwhelmed, unable to grasp the situation. And then, clearly and calmly, in a voice that carried straight into their ears, I said, "Family, you say? Just a few hours ago, Tracy sent me a message saying you were spending the night with the real family." I could see Tracy's face turn pale at my words. My mother opened and closed her mouth, trying to speak, but no words came out. They used the word family only when it was convenient for them, only when it benefited them. I continued, "So tell me, how do you define family? Is it a temporary contract that applies only when you need my money?" No one could answer. Their silence said more than any words could. I drew a line between us, an invisible line they would never cross again. Listen carefully. As I wrote on social media as of today, all financial support from me ends. Completely. The post-hurricane repairs, the property taxes, the insurance fees, your wasteful spending for the sake of appearances, every bit of it. I placed my hand on the door. And this villa is my asset, built by me alone from what was left after covering your extravagances. You have no right to set foot on this property, not one step. Leave, now. And don't ever come back. Without waiting for a response, I closed the heavy door slowly, deliberately, right in front of them. The thud of the door echoed like the beginning of my new life. Even after it closed, I could hear their shouting and pleading from outside. But soon those voices shifted into resignation. Then the sound of a car engine faded into the distance and silence returned to my fortress. With trembling hands, I drank a glass of water. It felt like a strange exhaustion after performing a complicated surgery. The next morning, I began to act. First, I spread out the weekly forwarded mail that had arrived from my primary residence. Among the stack, I spotted a thick envelope from a bank I didn't recognize. A bank I had never done business with. A cold feeling slid down my spine. I set the envelope aside for the moment and called the attorney I had been referred to. A lawyer named Jim Baker, said to be a composed veteran specializing in real estate and financial crimes. I briefly explained the situation, including my family's sudden appearance at my villa the previous night. He listened quietly, then spoke in a calm, steady voice. "Vanessa, you are not only morally justified, you are legally correct. First, regarding the trespassing on your property and the threatening behavior, we will immediately file for a restraining order. They must never be allowed near your property again. As for ending the financial support, that is merely the cessation of voluntary gifts. There is no issue whatsoever." His quiet yet firm words gave solid legal structure to my long-held resolve. "Now then, please bring me all documents related to this matter, especially anything showing the payments you've made on their behalf." At that, my eyes drifted back to the envelope on the table. "Mr. Baker, actually, there may be another problem." I tore open the envelope as I began to explain. A suspicious loan taken out in my name, one I had never signed, and the possibility that someone had forged my digital signature. On the other end of the line, Mr. Baker drew a sharp breath. For the first time, a cutting edge entered his normally calm voice. "That is not a family dispute. That is clear-cut fraud." His instructions were precise and swift. "Vanessa, first we need facts. Contact that bank immediately and request the detailed records of the contract, especially the timestamps and IP addresses for the digital signature. I will send an official request under my name as well, but the fastest response will come from you." I immediately called the bank's fraud investigation department. As I explained the situation, I heard the tension rising in the representative's voice. A few hours later, the bank called back. Their findings confirmed my worst suspicion. According to our records, the refinancing contract under the name Vanessa Simpson was digitally signed 2 months ago, on a Tuesday at 3:15 p.m. The IP address at the time of the signature matches perfectly with the connection registered to your parents' residence. And then the bank continued. During the signing process, an authentication code was sent to the registered mobile number for identity verification. That number is ending with... The number he read out belonged to my sister, Hannah. All the pieces snapped into place. At 3 p.m. that day, I had been attending an important meeting with the client, and during that time, my family had been inside my childhood home, stealing my future. Hannah had sat at the computer, typing in the verification code sent to her phone. Beside her, my parents had either silently condoned her actions or actively encouraged them. The house I had saved 5 years ago had become the crime scene used to destroy me. After hanging up the phone, I couldn't move for a while. I no longer felt betrayed. What I felt was something darker, like staring into the bottomless void within human nature. They had stolen not only my assets, but also my goodwill, my affection, and the last remaining trust I had invested in the word family. The next day, I visited Attorney Baker's office with all the evidence in hand. The bank's official investigation report, the IP address logs, and a thick file of bank statements proving every payment I had covered on my family's behalf. Mr. Baker silently reviewed the documents. His expression was as cool and objective as a surgeon reading an X-ray. After finishing the last page, he set down his pen and looked straight at me. "Vanessa, the evidence is complete. There is no room for doubt. This is a deliberate, malicious financial fraud. And it is especially clear that your sister was the primary actor." His words carried no sympathy or emotion. Oddly, that steadiness grounded me. "There are two options," he continued. "One is to file a criminal complaint. That could result in arrests and criminal records. The other is to initiate a civil lawsuit to nullify the fraudulent loan and seek compensation for your damages. Which do you choose?" I hesitated for a moment. Did I truly want to send them to prison? But what they had done certainly warranted consequences of that magnitude. Sensing my doubt, Mr. Baker spoke again. "Criminal charges can be filed at any time. First, we must legally secure your assets and financial reputation. We file civilly, obtain a court order invalidating the contract, then go from there." His proposal was rational, and it settled naturally into my heart. This wasn't revenge. This was the necessary act of reclaiming my life. "Civil, please proceed." When I said that, he nodded quietly. "Understood. I'll begin drafting the complaint immediately. The defendants will be your sister, Hannah Simpson, as the principal perpetrator, and your parents as accomplices who benefited from the fraud." When I stepped outside the firm that day, the sky looked just a little brighter. For the first time, I felt as though I could see a faint light at the end of the tunnel. On the day the court documents arrived at my parents' home, my phone began to ring again. But this time, it wasn't angry shouting. What I heard was panic and fear. The first message came from my mother. "Vanessa, this has to be some kind of mistake, right? How could you do something like suing your own family? Please, I'm begging you, withdraw it." I didn't reply. A few hours later, my brother Nick called. His voice was trembling. "Vanessa, please reconsider. Mom and Dad are in a panic. Tracy says she never thought it would go this far. She's crying. Hannah won't come out of her room. You're tearing this family apart." My fault? A cold laugh escaped me before I could stop it. "I tore the family apart? Nick, do you seriously believe that?" At my calm question, Nick faltered. Well, Nick, have you ever once thought about the fact that your life and Tracy's vanity and the private school your kids attend have all been funded by the money I kept sending? Have you ever considered that your comfort existed because I sacrificed?" He had no answer. He was just as much a beneficiary and a participant in the system that exploited me. "I'm not withdrawing the lawsuit. This is the seed you all planted. We'll talk in court." I hung up. They were finally beginning to understand. I was no longer their convenient daughter, no longer their personal ATM. Without me, their life of vanity and pretense would crumble like a sandcastle. That night, I canceled every automatic payment for their mortgage and insurance, payments I had covered for 5 years. With a single tap, I severed their lifeline. It was shockingly easy. Only a month after I stopped transferring money, the Simpson family's thin veneer began peeling away with startling speed. Mortgage delinquency notices arrived, and the private school Tracy was obsessed with sent stern inquiries about unpaid tuition for Nick's children. My mother begged, "Vanessa, please, just send us the money." And my brother accused me, "Because of you, my kids are going to be expelled." There wasn't a shred of apology or remorse in anything they said. And then one afternoon, I received a direct call from Tracy. But what I heard wasn't pleading. It was a shrill, hysterical scream. "Vanessa, you ruined everything. Our whole plan is destroyed because of you. The kids are humiliated at school, and the house is buried in collection notices. Is this what you wanted?" She cried and screamed and hurled insults at me, but her words no longer had any coherence. She was simply panicking on a sinking ship, desperately looking for someone to blame. If it weren't for you, we would have been happy. That, no doubt, was her true belief. My very existence had wounded her pride, a mirror forcing her to face the reality she didn't want to see. She didn't even have the courage to run, because her hollow pride could survive only aboard this sinking vessel called the Simpson family. Their so-called bond had been held together only by my money. Now that the glue was gone, the object labeled family was rotting and collapsing from within. I ended the hysterical call without saying a word. What she said had no legal relevance, only the desperate rambling of someone searching for a scapegoat. I reported only the facts to Attorney Baker. His reply was brief, a sign that they're cornered. Their emotional collapse no longer concerned me. Months later, the first hearing was held. The sight of my family in court was pitiful. No expensive clothes, no flashy jewelry. They were gaunt, visibly shaken. A court-appointed attorney sat beside them, wearing a gloomy expression that suggested he already knew there was no hope of winning. In stark contrast, the table before Attorney Baker and me was stacked with the immovable evidence. The trial was one-sided. Mr. Baker presented the facts calmly, one by one. Bank records, the IP address, the phone number that received the authentication code on Hannah's device. My sister Hannah couldn't even answer the judge properly. I don't remember. I didn't mean to. She repeated those childish excuses over and over. My parents simply cowered with their heads hanging low. My father's silence no longer resembled authority, only cowardice and irresponsibility. And when Mr. Baker projected 2 images onto the courtroom monitor, the air turned to ice. One was the screenshot of the photo Tracy had posted on social media. The other was the same photo she had sent directly to my phone, accompanied by a malicious message. They publicly declared that the plaintiff was not real family, privately insulted her as well, and all the while exploited her credit to commit organized fraud. By the end of the day, the judge's decision was exactly what anyone would expect. 6 months after the ruling, the Simpson family's kingdom had collapsed beyond recognition. Hannah declared bankruptcy. My parents had their house seized and fled town, nearly in the manner of a midnight escape. And my brother and his wife? Tracy didn't abandon Nick. Or rather, she couldn't. Her pride wouldn't allow her to flee in defeat. They were driven out of the upscale neighborhood and forced into a cheap apartment. Nick earned small wages doing day labor work, and Tracy, swallowing her pride, had taken a job scanning groceries at a supermarket checkout. These people who once looked down on me now struggled to feed themselves, spending their days doing nothing but arguing. Private school for their children was no longer even a dream. I learned all of this from the periodic update emails Attorney Baker sent me. Reading those facts in text felt like hearing about events in a far-off country. I feel sorry, but this is simply the result of the path they chose. That was how Mr. Baker concluded one of his emails. I closed my screen and exhaled slowly. I felt no sympathy. They had tried to steal what I spent years building. They had only destroyed the ground they themselves stood on. Time passed, and I built a new daily life in my seaside villa. One sunny afternoon, as I was drinking coffee on the terrace, the gate intercom rang. The monitor showed Tracy, exhausted, wearing cheap clothes. She had broken the restraining order issued by the court just to come here. I hesitated for a moment, then pressed the call button. "What do you want, Tracy? You realize it's illegal for you to be here, don't you?" Her voice through the speaker was thin, trembling, nothing like the arrogance she once had. "Vanessa, I'm sorry, I was wrong about everything. Please, just one more chance." "One more chance for what?" When I asked quietly, she fell silent. Then, choking on her words, she finally said, "I just want to give the kids a decent meal. Please, help us." Her words were shaped like an apology, but even through the screen, I could see that her eyes held not remorse, but humiliation, and a hint of resentment. She had come to beg the person she hated most, not out of reflection, but because her pride had been shredded and she needed to survive. I returned her own past words to her, calmly, distinctly. "You said you were having the best time with your real family only. From now on, you should continue spending your life with that real family only." Through the monitor, I could see Tracy's face contort in despair. I said nothing more and shut off the call and the gate power. The children were innocent. If someday they are abandoned by their foolish parents and left without care, then perhaps I would extend my hand to them. But that help will never pass through you again. And besides, everything you said today was not for the children. It was for yourself, who has lost everything. I lifted my coffee cup and gazed out at the blue ocean before me. The horizon between sea and sky stretched endlessly, just like my life, an open world where no one could ever trespass across my boundaries again.